All guests on ZASLOW Show brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. You guys know what I'm talking about. European roots with a Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. If you're out of Johnny Cuba in your household, you could purchase a six-pack your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. You know that's how I'm going to enjoy the Marlins tonight. 8:08 first pitch. I'm on the couch in the ZASLOW Mansion family room. I got a nice cold Johnny Cuba in my hand. That's how you always drink responsibly. You do it in the comfort of your own home. And of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us here is our pal, Jessica Blaylock, Bally Sports, Florida. Jessica, I was really excited for you. I sent you a message right when the game ended. I didn't want to do it before the 27th out. That's a jinx, even though the Marlins had a 4-run lead going into that ninth inning. So I waited until the final out, and I sent you a text. I was really excited for you to get to experience what you were about to experience in the clubhouse on Saturday night with the champagne and the beers. And I was especially happy for you because I was sad for you that you didn't get to experience it with the Panthers postseason. So I was really glad that you were able to do it here with the Marlins. So tell me about how Saturday night went. And by the way, I haven't watched a Marlins post-game show all year, and I watched it in its entirety on Saturday night. I did not get off the couch. I really enjoyed all of it.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And it's, I keep talking to people about it, and I like to think that every single day I'm thankful for what I get to do. I mean, Zaz, you and I have had countless conversations about how we work in basically the adult playground, getting to talk about sports, getting to watch sports for a living. So I'd like to think to myself that I'm thankful every single day for what I do, but it's nights like Saturday nights that you really almost can't fully wrap your mind around. And I keep thinking about it, and I keep thinking about being in there and having guys walk up to you and pour the champagne and the beer on your head, and like Matt Barnes jumping in while I'm interviewing Tanner Scott, seeing the emotion from Sandy, talking to him, and just, I went up to John Birdie the next day and I was like, Bert, you're one of the guys I'm most happy for, because he and Sandy have now been here the longest out of any player in the clubhouse. And I mean, we have been through some tough moments and some tough seasons. And so to finally have an experience like Saturday night, it's almost hard to put into words what it means to you, and how you realize that there are so few people who get to do something like that, and you don't want to miss a second of it, and you want to take it all in, and you're trying to focus on doing your job, because I wanted to do the moment justice, right? Like, you always wonder how you're going to do when you get an opportunity like that. And the biggest thing is you realize it's not about you. It's about doing the moment justice. It's about doing the players justice. And Skip Schumacher, who has done a phenomenal job in his first season as manager of the Marlins. And it was just so much fun. And I was so happy for the players, for Skip. But I loved looking over. Honestly, one of my favorite things was looking at the way that the players were treating Kim Ng, and how every single one of them was gravitating towards her, and how every single one of them was making her such a big part of the moment, because she's done a tremendous job putting this team together. And this team is not necessarily a team that's full of household names. And I think that's what I love most about it. Yes, Luis Arraez is the defending AL batting champ and now the NL batting champ. Soler's been a World Series MVP, but you've got a lot of guys who have made contributions on this team that are not necessarily household names. So for these players to be able to celebrate and to see the joy and the excitement of that moment, it just was awesome from start to finish. And the game itself as well, right? Because you could kind of feel it as each inning went by. You're getting closer and closer and closer.
It was their night.
Yeah, to clinching a playoff spot, and you're trying to like balance your excitement, but also knowing, okay, they've still got to finish the game. And so it just feels like this whole moment that's building and building and building. And then when Tanner Scott finally got that last out, you just like this euphoria, I think, just spilled over everybody to know they did it. It was amazing.
I was explaining to my son, he's and he stayed up and watched the whole thing with me too. He's 14, so he's never experienced. I mean,
Yeah.
look, to me, I hate even referencing the qualifying for the postseason in 2020. That's bullshit. That's not real baseball. It's not a real season. Like it's just not. And there's no crowd in any of the games. It's not real. And so the last time the Marlins made the playoffs was 20 years ago. And I explained, so this is first time experiencing any of this. And so I explained to him, I go, make sure you stick around because they're going to do champagne and it's going to be a whole celebration. And so I had to explain to him how, when the Heat make the playoffs as an 8 seed last year, they don't celebrate with champagne.
Right.
When the Panthers make the playoffs as an 8 seed last year, they don't celebrate with champagne. Well,
and they clinched, you got to remember, they clinched on a night that they weren't even playing because Chicago beat Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So we're watching not even like a game that the Panthers are involved in.
Yeah.
That means that they are going to the playoffs, right? So like, it's such a different celebration.
Well, yeah, because like I'm explaining, because like I'm explaining to him, it's 162 games and it's a grind and they play every day. If an 8 seed in the NBA were to celebrate with champagne in the locker room after clinching a playoff spot, we would point and laugh at them endlessly. But it's not like that in baseball. It's different because it's such a grind to get there.
Yeah, and especially after this last week that we had with the Marlins, everything that we went through in New York, I am still trying to recover from just the crazy bedtimes. I mean, we literally left New York after the rain delay, suspended game incident. We didn't take off from New York.
How angry were the guys getting on the plane?
My gosh. I think the anger had kind of dissolved at that point because they finally suspended it. And everybody was just so exhausted and ready to get to Pittsburgh that at that point, I think we were just grateful that we were finally leaving. I think there was a lot more frustration when we were still at Citi Field waiting to find out what was going to happen because there was no clearing up of the weather. I mean, it was pouring the entire time. Once the tarp came on, we did have those 20 minutes where it let up, where, the guys came out into the dugout. You thought maybe we could try and get this in, but like the grounds crew wasn't doing anything to get the field ready. Everybody was standing around. It's one of the reasons Skip was getting so frustrated is because he was like, if this is our window, like we got to start doing stuff. We got to start getting there. There was water.
No, the Mets were fucking with you guys. That's what was happening.
It just was, the whole thing was so frustrating. So I think honestly, by the time we got on the plane, we were just glad there was some sort of resolution.
Well, and what was the holdup with MLB coming up with the scenario of, okay, you actually are not going to have to go back on Monday? What was the holdup there?
I don't know why they put off making an announcement because to me, it was almost like the longer we didn't know what the scenario was and what we were going to have to do, that was almost like more confusing than, and I get like in the very beginning, because at one point there was a possibility that like it was going to have to be played because we needed to figure out if the Marlins were going to be the second wild card or the third.
I'll tell you, I'd rather have the third wild card seat if it meant not going back to New York.
Yeah. So there were just, there's a lot of ins and outs of that whole situation that would probably take so much more time than we have to get into, and why they handled it the way that it was handled and who the responsibility really falls with. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter. We finally land in Pittsburgh at 4:04 in the morning, get to the hotel at 4:36 a.m. I remember because I kept looking at my watch. I went to bed. I turned the lights off in my room at 5:36 in the morning. So probably most guys fell asleep in between like 5:30, 6 a.m. And that's just part, right? That is part of baseball. It's part of the things that people don't see throughout the course of a 162 game season. Is not just the playing that many games in that many days. It's the 5 a.m. hotel arrivals. It's the going to bed one night at 1:30 in the morning, the next night at 6 a.m., the next night at, 2 a.m. Like that it's just so hard to put into words. And I think that's why you make a great point of why they have the champagne celebration and all that, because it is a culmination of so much energy and time and travel and time away from your family and time away from your puppies. There's just so many things that go into a baseball season that are so hard to even put into words, and why that moment of finally clinching a playoff spot is so significant and so celebrated.
I bought my tickets for game 3 of the NLDS, which of course we know would be against Atlanta. I've never been to a Major League Baseball playoff game. I mean, I've only had 2 opportunities. I haven't been to either of them. I picked up a trio of tickets yesterday, but this is going to be a really difficult wild card series. So let's talk a little bit about that. All 3 potential games begin tonight in Philadelphia. Jesus Luzardo, so cool for him, who was dealing the other night. So cool for him that he's a local kid. He grew up a Marlin fan, Parkland, Stoneman Douglas. So he cares. And so he's getting the ball tonight. What do we make of the pitching matchup tonight? I know it's Zach Wheeler on the other side. Tell me a little bit about what to expect tonight. Luis Arraez, is he leading off tonight? What's his health situation? Go ahead.
Yeah. So first, just starting with the pitching matchup. I mean, this is an incredible matchup because Zach Wheeler is nasty too, and Luzardo coming off of that strong last regular season performance, where he just absolutely dominated that Mets lineup, who, by the way, has still, I know they are not a playoff team. I know maybe most disappointing team of Major League Baseball this year, but they still have some legit bats in their lineup. And Luzardo just
mowed him down.
10 strikeouts, 8 on the slider. That breaking pitch was just absurd. Probably the best we've ever seen from him. So if he can pitch against the Phillies the way he pitched against the Mets, you feel really, really good about your chances in game 1. And I was watching MLB Network the other day, and I thought Mark DeRosa did a phenomenal job breaking down the lefty-lefty matchup of Luzardo versus guys like Kyle Schwarber, who obviously low average, but a ton of power. The matchup against a guy like Bryce Harper. But that's the other thing. You look at that Philly lineup, they've got a good blend of lefties and righties. Trey Turner, who caught fire in the second half of the season after very surprisingly having some struggles this year. We're obviously familiar with JT Realmuto and what he's capable of doing. So I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. And Wheeler on the other side, just ridiculous, right? 13 wins on the season for the Phillies. He's got a sub-3 career playoff ERA, which is really, really impressive. So it's not going to be an easy matchup for the Marlins either. But
that's crazy with game 1. Somebody's facing elimination tomorrow night.
Yeah. No, I know it's insane. But I think one thing that we've seen from the Marlins this season, they a lot of times rise to the occasion when they actually face better teams and better pitchers. And that's one thing that Jazz has talked about before. Some of these losses throughout the course of the regular season against teams maybe you feel like you should have beat, or pitchers you should have beat. Sometimes this team had a tendency, I think, to almost, I hate saying play down to the competition, because it is Major League Baseball. Every guy is in the league for a reason. And that's something Skip talks about a lot, never underestimating your opponent. But I'll just go back to what Jazz said. Sometimes they do play down to their competition, but a lot of times rise to the level of these really good teams, which was evidenced in that sweep against the Atlanta Braves in the month of September. So I think you're going to get a huge boost from, I would be stunned if Arraez isn't in that leadoff spot or maybe batting second. And that's the sole reason why they did not force him to come back when the ankle wasn't ready. I mean, I saw.
Boy, what a big hit for him on Friday night, huh?
What a boost too. Like, and I love that the entire time he's running down to first base, he's pointing and looking into the Marlins dugout, because they know what a morale boost that is to be able to see him pinch hit, get a hit like he's done all season. But I watched him all last week on the road with the Marlins. He had an air cast on while we were in New York, was struggling, walking, was still visibly limping. But then in Pittsburgh, had the ankle taped, had the air cast off, took ground balls, a couple days in a row, looked so much better on Saturday. And he even told me that Friday night after we talked to him when he pinch hit that he felt good enough to be back in the starting lineup the next day. But they didn't need to force it. They did not need to force it. And now you have a Luis Arraez who's had a week plus of being able to rest, being able to get treatment, being able to feel so much better, and being in a good spot for getting back in there tonight. So I think that's going to give you a huge boost. And I think just riding the momentum off of knowing, you really had to truly battle until game 161, 160.2, if that's how you want to refer to it, since you didn't finish technically playing the game against the Mets. And just another thing, being that team that nobody's really giving a chance to. It's like, it doesn't matter what the Marlins do. Nobody wants to acknowledge that they're like a worthy contender for the playoffs. And I think if anything, you just harness that and let it carry you with that mentality of, okay, well, let's show people then like why we're here and why we can make a deep playoff run.
So I know we obviously we have Luzardo tonight. We have Braxton Garrett, who is slated tomorrow night. So does that mean tonight, as far as the bullpen goes, like, is it all hands on deck, everybody else, to try and get this game tonight?
Yeah, I would think all hands on deck because, again, like Skip always says, you are managing, you are playing to win that game that night. You never think about, okay, maybe I don't go with this guy because I might need him tomorrow. No, like, especially life and death, like you said, if the Marlins don't win tonight, they're already facing elimination tomorrow. You play to win the game that night. That's what matters. So I would imagine everybody available, whatever the circumstance, whatever Skip Schumacher needs to do, you are going to manage the game. You're going to play the game to win that night.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's good. It's going to be fun. What are your emotions like tonight while you're watching? Are you nervous the whole game?
Yes, always, right? Even during the regular season. I mean, it's
baseball playoffs are so good for people who don't watch, a ton of Marlins throughout the year. Every pitch, literally every pitch is so important for what happens the remainder of that at bat. The difference between a 2-1 count and a 1-2 count, it's enormous. Every single pitch. So MLB playoffs, no matter what you think of Major League Baseball, if you think it's boring or it's slow or what have you, MLB playoffs are always so good. I'm also really interested to see tonight or starting this afternoon, the pace of the game. There's no reason to believe that it's going to be any different from the regular season, right?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit more slowed down.
Because more pitching changes, maybe?
Yeah, and just, just what's writing on every single game, right? Like the clock
is the clock.
Yeah, the clock is the clock, but I do think you're going to see more guys take the clock as far as they can.
Okay.
Right? Like, I think you're going to see a
lot of times they pitch at 7 or 8 in the regular season.
A little bit slower of a pace because it's the playoffs. But I mean, yeah. And by the way, how good has the pitch clock been for the product of Major League Baseball? I mean, huge difference. I thought this season was so enjoyable. I thought it was so much fun. I think it made baseball fun again. Like all the new rules that they've implemented and stuck with, I think has been great for the game. But yeah, I think you'll see things slow down just a hair, not significant because like you said, the pitch clock is the pitch clock, but I think you'll see maybe some guys take it all the way down, or more guys calling timeout at the plate to get themselves settled in the box. Like, I think you'll see a little bit more of that than you normally would have seen in the regular season.
Now, if the Marlin fan wants a little bit of extra local coverage, what do they have on tap tonight?
Yes, Kelly Sacco is in Philadelphia. She'll be doing not only the Marlins radio call, but she's gathering all sorts of interviews for our social media at Bally Marlins. Yesterday, she caught up with Jesus Luzardo ahead of his start. You can watch that interview online. She talked to Joey Wendell. She talked to Josh Bell. So she will be there representing Bally Sports, and she will have you covered with all sorts of cool content on social media.
All right, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I think you've done a good job getting the Marlins fan excited here. I remember what 2003 was like. Like, it was Major League Baseball playoffs are really, really great. Excellent job, Jessica. Always love having you on. And look, hopefully we'll do this again next round. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes, please. Let's put it out there that we will be talking again for the next round.
Great job, Jessica. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Always love coming on with you.